afternoon. I'm sure you all love living in a country where you have, under the Constitution, many rights. Right to free speech, which allows me to say what I'm saying today. Rights to marry. Rights to go out and protest. Could you imagine living in a country where you had few rights, discriminated against for who you were, forced to do things you didn't want to do? That's a very scary thought to me, at least. The scariest thing is we do live in that country. In the United States, same-sex couples are discriminated against every day for who they are and who they love and are treated as second-class citizens. Discrimination is a problem in our country, and it's something that we have to address. Discrimination against same-sex couples prevents them from marrying, a right that many heterosexuals have, some take for granted, and something that their counterparts don't have. In his article, I Object, Aaron East states, the country is divided over the issue of same-sex relationships. Rights afforded to same-sex couples by the federal government is slim and is mirrored by the states. Our government can't even decide what to do with it, and so neither can our states. Following in this is an article, Effect of Same-Sex Marriage Laws on Healthcare by Mark Hatzenbuehler. Since the Defense of Marriage Act was passed in 1996, 29 states have banned same-sex marriages. 12 states have restricted it to opposite-sex couples only in their constitution. And only 6 states have allowed same-sex marriage along with DC. Now, of course, that includes Maryland and Maine now, thanks to the laws that were passed there just a few weeks ago. Another issue that comes with being unable to marry is homeownership. In an article by Karen Lappel, Homeownership Among Opposite-Sex and Same-Sex Couples in the U.S. Recently, researchers have explored same-sex households, along with and compared to married and unmarried opposite-sex couples. If homeownership varies with marital status, prohibition of same-sex marriage may impose added cost and discourage homeownership amongst same-sex couples. Now, this may not sound like discrimination to you. The way it sounds, opposite-sex couples that are not married can't pay lower rates than married couples, but they have the added advantage of being able to marry, something that same-sex couples do not have. Reginald Williams' article, Same-Sex Marriage and Equality, states, some argue that same-sex marriage is not an equal rights issue because where same-sex marriage is illegal, heterosexuals and homosexuals have the same right, the right to marry someone of the opposite sex. He goes further with the article, quoting Richard McDowell, who argues, defenders of same-sex marriage want to legitimize the right to marry persons of the same sex. Heterosexuals lack that right, and it's not a proper foundation for equal rights. I'm sorry, I've never met a heterosexual that wanted to marry someone of the same sex. Just like I've never met a homosexual that wants to marry someone of the opposite sex. So, to me, it is an equal rights issue because heterosexuals do have the right that homosexuals do not. Now, defenders and supporters of only opposite-sex marriage are only thinking of the children. Timothy Murphy's article, Same-Sex Marriage, Not a Threat to Marriage or Children, writes, in reviewing the reasons some object to same-sex marriage, law professor Martha Nussbaum says, the one most heard and worth close attention to is the main purpose of marriage is procreation and bearing children. All right, I'll take that as a fact. So with that logic, then opposite-sex couples who are unable to have children or who do not wish to have children should then be forced to divorce, as they can't have children or don't want children, and since marriage is the purpose of procreation, it would be breaking laws. That, of course, is not the purpose of this. On the issue of marriage arises from churches. In Severino's article, Or for Poor, the specific consequences that will likely flow from legitimizing same-sex marriage would force churches to provide financial or other support for same-sex married couples as they do to opposite-sex couples, or the government will withdraw funds. This is completely falsified, as separation of church and state, the state cannot force the church to do anything that's against their beliefs, just like the church cannot force their beliefs onto states. However, as we know, that still happens. Now, discrimination of gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgenders and queers goes further than just the inability to marry. Hatzenbruer goes on, lesbian, gay, and bisexual populations have higher rates of mental and physical health problems compared with heterosexual population. Discrimination is one of the hypotheses to this. Now, I have actually walked out and seen something like this on my vehicle. This is really disturbing and can drive anyone to go into despair, making them mentally ill and further making them physically ill. With so much discrimination, we must look at solutions. One of the solutions is to allow same-sex marriage. In the article, Prop 8 repeal could give California economic bump. Danielle Kurtenben states, census data shows there are 100,000 same-sex couples in California. 28,000 of those identify as spouses. Another 24,000 are likely to marry within the next 3 years. Those 24,000 weddings could generate $290 million to local economy over the 3 years and 2,600 jobs. On top of that, the revenue from licenses required for marriage would boost the economy by $63.8 million over the next 3 years. That's a lot of money to California if we just allow this one simple thing. However, to me and to many, marriage is not a solution in itself. In his article, Marriage Inequality, Douglas Najami says, discrimination against married same-sex couples at its core will be based on sexual orientation. Simply treating married same-sex couples like married opposite-sex couples does not solve this problem. Rather, same-sex couples must be treated equally across relationship contexts. This should be the center of equality. So stating this basically, same-sex couples need equal treatment, not just equal titles. Now I want you to take a moment and imagine that another proposition has come to California to allow same-sex marriages. Whether you're for or against, let's state that you vote to allow it. Allowing this, a couple gets married. They hire local businesses, create jobs for those businesses, get their licenses, and increase the revenue of California, along with being able to live happily with the person that they love most dearly. Now, I know everyone has their own views and beliefs on same-sex relationships. I'm not here to change your view, and I'm not here to change your belief. What I do ask is that if you are against same-sex relationships, remember that your actions do affect others, and don't be something that stops two people from living long, happy lives. It's also stated that when someone knows someone who is in a same-sex relationship, they tend to change their views. I want you to know that you do know someone, and your views and your actions affect me. Thank you. Are there any questions? They're still in shock.
Ken, you got the picture in advance, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did, yes.
I didn't know he was going to widen it so much.
I think it's an awesome picture of you guys. That's adorable.
That's cute.
Thank you. No questions?
Yeah. Do you want to get married?
I do. I would love to marry Ken one day.
Oh.
And that picture was actually taken at my cousin's wedding. So it was a lot of fun.
I sort of have a comment. I thought it was really good that you didn't just focus on the marriage part,
Yeah.
and you brought in all the different parts that contribute to it, because a lot of people shut off immediately when they just hear the marriage.
That's
And
why I
so-
did it specifically on discrimination against same-sex relationships, because there's more than just the marriage.
Very
Yeah.
I mean, allowing marriage, like I stated, we have the title, but we still don't have the same treatment.
right.
Because people are still going to see it as, okay, it's still two guys or two girls who are married, and not two people who are married. And that's what I'm trying to bring forth. Yes, Mary?
While doing all this research, did you research how many other species actually have homosexual relationships?
The only one that I know off the top of my head are dolphins.
Bonobos too.
Penguins,
Giraffes.
rabbits,
That's just off the top of my head.
deer, pretty much
Research
everything.
on that.
And then with that,
You could label every
do you know
animal.
how many
Okay.
show?
Hannah, yes.
Oh, have you ever been tempted to relocate?
Every goddamn day.
and I have a lot of worldview on it because I have lived in multiple states in the United States and have seen a lot of different things. That picture of that car was actually in Texas, which surprisingly in the Dallas or Fort Worth area is very gay friendly. And very open to multiple types of people. So seeing that, I'm assuming they probably lived in a smaller area. I don't know exactly who it is. That's why the license plate was blacked out. I found it on just Google pictures of it. But I actually find that when it comes to being treated, the California is probably the best of the states I've lived in. But it's all your perspective and where you live. You can live in a small town in California, and I'm sure it's not going to be the same as like living in Chico. So there's a lot of difference. There's a lot of differences.
Yeah.
What saddens me is California is supposed to be the leader in a lot of this, and we're still there's 8 states and in DC ahead of us in same-sex marriage. So.
Carefully, I want to ask you, Josh, if you feel when you go out in public with Ken, do you feel threatened, or do you feel like you have to be careful about where you go out or what kind of behaviors you have so you're not under attack?
Here I don't. Personally, I don't, because just the city we live in is a little bit more open-minded, I would say, than but there are a lot of college students who are really like, do what?
To a degree.
To a degree,
Ken,
in
you
areas
have
that
a
are
different,
different.
you have a different perspective.
I don't know. Just the other day I was heading to improv, and I'm dressed like this, so I don't know. Maybe I looked excessively gay that day. Particularly gay today. I'm sitting there at the stoplight. Some dudes pull up in a Jeep, and they look. Fag! And then stop. That's more about you than it is about me.
I think that's more of a they were dared to do it probably. Next door
But
pull
he's
up on it.
just sitting there alone, and he's like
Oh.
some dude just pulls up. Fag! And the door's off.
Yeah.
No,
No, because I have gay friends who say that they think about where they go, or they have to hold hands under the tablecloth, and that's in Chico that they're very aware of
Yeah,
their safety.
Yeah.
It's a really serious.
Yeah, we really, the only place that I think we actually out in the open that we've held hands is like down in on campus a few times, and then down in I can't even think, down like on Main Street area. Downtown.
Well, and I would say, because like a lot of my friends, like they've been severely beaten in Chico, so I would say it's
Yeah.
I was
not.
gonna say that the dude that was.
Well, and notice he said he didn't, but then there's only one place where they feel comfortable at
I'm not
the
really.
Yeah, I don't feel
though,
threatened.
so.
I guess it's just in the back of my head, just
Yeah.
because
You're
of
just
where
conscious.
I've lived. I lived in Southern Illinois,
Mhm.
and you don't do that
No.
anywhere ever. So I mean, I lived in places like that, and I've also lived in Texas, and I've also lived in South Carolina. So I mean, these are places in my adult life that it's like you just really don't, or you're careful. So I guess it's just like maybe in the back of my mind I'm careful what I do, but going out I really don't feel threatened all too much. I don't know why. Probably in the back of my mind I might, and I just suppress it.
You're repressed.
I'm repressing it.